Welcome back to the Pineapple Couch. We're going to be talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 1. The first episode came out last Friday on Disney Plus, and the second episode will be coming out this Friday. Got 6 episodes, should be fun. We're going to do the same thing we did for WandaVision. And so you know who I'm about to introduce. It's the man, the myth, the legend, Peter Gonzalez. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be tackling Marvel's next project.
Yeah, and there's going to be no shortage of Marvel projects to talk about here on the couch, and we just had some breaking news. Peter, do you want to go and tell the good folks what just happened?
For sure. So apparently Disney just announced that they are once again pushing back Black Widow, this time to July 9th as their kickoff to summer, essentially. And they're going to make it also available with the premium fee adage on Disney Plus the same day. So this will definitely this also shifts Shang-Li down to September.
Mm-hmm.
And the other dates, I think Eternals and Spider-Man are still staying where they're currently at. But
Okay,
we're
so
gonna have to wait.
interesting. So we'll have Loki, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man, and don't we have a show in the fall? Is Hawkeye in the fall?
I think Hawkeye it's either Hawkeye or it's What If.
Okay, so yeah, we have
those two in the fall.
A ton of Marvel content, and so now for Black Widow, that's pushed back like 14 months now, right? It was supposed to come out last May.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's interesting too, coming off of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, though, since over the weekend Disney did say that it was their highest rated premiere over WandaVision and over The Mandalorian.
That's
so
wild.
I feel like that kind of gives them proof of concept that Disney Plus is working. So now I think it makes sense for them to put Black Widow on Disney Plus. I know I will see it in a theater, but I don't know.
How much is it on Disney Plus? How much is the premium thing?
I believe the previous two that have been done, which was Mulan and Raya, were $30 additional.
Oh, dang. Is you get it for like 24 hours or something like that?
I think you get it, like you get to keep it on there. But what's interesting, though, is that then they add these for free anyways a couple months later.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically get to have it just a couple months ahead of time.
Interesting. Well, it'll be a lot of questions will be answered based on the numbers of that movie, on how many people go into theaters, how many people watch it on Disney Plus. Because I do think, if you just think about what just happened with the Snyder Cut, we're not going to talk about the Snyder Cut today, but there is a lot of momentum, it seems, towards these Disney Plus, HBO Max type releases, and so I think Black Widow will be a good a gauge of how people are feeling going back to the theaters. I like both. I'm on both ends. Like I think it's fun to go into a theater. You get a big Slurpee, you get a big thing of popcorn. It's super fun. Obviously, moments like in Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, the huge moments. It is cool to be a part of a crowd because everyone's kind of losing their mind. But I also am lazy and a homebody, so sometimes I'm like, it's pretty nice to not have to leave my couch. So I look forward to taking advantage of both options. I think that's what I will be doing.
I like it. You gave valid arguments for both sides of it. I like that.
And then chose neither. That's how I do it. All right, let's get into Falcon Winter Soldier episode 1. Where I wanted to start, though, is just a little background for all of you folks out there about these two main characters in the show and what they have done, where they have been throughout the MCU. Let's start with Sam Wilson. He is the Falcon. And Peter, chime in with anything extra you have, or if I'm wrong, chime in as well, because I did most of this off the top. Sam Wilson is a former Air Force member or soldier. What is it? Air Force?
I thought it was pararescue.
He's a pararescue. Okay.
Airman.
And he basically he left active duty when his partner died, and he went to work with veterans that are struggling with PTSD. That's how it's introduced in, I believe, Winter Soldier, right, Peter?
Correct.
Okay, and so that's we meet him when he meets Steve Rogers in Winter Soldier, and throughout Winter Soldier, as there's the whole corrupt Shield is Hydra. Actually, he works with Black Widow and Captain America to stop them and also fight the Winter Soldier, which we'll get to later. And then the next time we see Sam Wilson is in Avengers: Age of Ultron. There is a party at the Avengers Tower Mansion in New York. And he checks in with Cap and talks about how he is still tracking Bucky. They don't say Bucky, but that's what we know who he's talking about. And then we're going to see him again In Civil War, he is a full-time member of Team Cap, fighting with Cap in the big conflict. And then he eventually goes to fight in Wakanda, and him and Rhodey are in the sky in the giant battle there, which is very cool. And then he is the first person we hear come back from the second snap, from Hulk's snap, and he says to Cap with the great line, "On your left." So that is Sam Wilson. Anything you'd like to add about a little background on? Oh, he's played by Anthony Mackie, and Anthony Mackie's tremendous. Peter?
I think you kind of included everything. Again, I think the show definitely touches on a lot of those things that you mentioned right now. Specifically, the "on your left" line is definitely something we hear throughout this, and I think even from the get-go, it really establishes the relationship between Cap and Sam and the friendship aspect, which I think is really an integral part of this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw, before we go into Bucky, I forget where I saw this, but I really liked it. It was basically saying how kind of if you combine Bucky and Sam, it's Steve.
Yeah.
Sam is like the more noble, do the right thing, typical hero. And then Bucky is the man out of time, similar to how Steve is. And if you take away the stuff of Bucky being mind controlled, Bucky's really not a bad person. So let's talk about that. Bucky Barnes, James Buchanan Barnes, also known as the Winter Soldier. We see him actually in Captain America, the First Avenger. He's Steve's best friend, goes on a double date with him, and he's headed to the military before Steve is. And Steve eventually meets up with him, and he does fight alongside Cap. He's a member of the Howling Commandos. Isn't that right, Peter?
Correct.
And we actually see Steve rescue him in that movie, but later we see what we think is him falling to his death in the First Avenger. But unfortunately, Hydra is able to capture him and brainwash him, and he becomes a killing machine known as the Winter Soldier. He basically just goes and kills people for 90 years straight and is pretty much unstoppable. We see him again in Winter Soldier, and he comes after Cap, which really puts Cap's head in a pretzel because he's like, "I thought you were dead." So there's a whole thing on that. The reason, though, that we have some hope for Bucky is because at the end of Winter Soldier, he does save Steve. He saves Captain America. He doesn't know why necessarily, but we do know that deep down in there, there's still Bucky Barnes, James Buchanan Barnes, Steve's best friend. And then we catch up with that in Civil War, where he is framed by Zemo for killing T'Challa, Black Panther's dad, at the embassy, which sparks all the Sokovian Accords. He's the main cause of Civil War, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's
it's
definitely
Zemo, but through Bucky, right?
Yeah, Zemo uses Bucky to create the rift in the Avengers, which obviously has repercussions.
Yeah, and so we find out that he actually did kill Tony's parents, which leads to a gnarly fight at the end of Civil War. That fight kind of leaves the Avengers in pieces at the beginning of Infinity War when Thanos and all of them come. The Avengers aren't really united, and that is the reason. At the end, though, of Civil War, he does go to Wakanda to rest and heal up. He gets a new vibranium arm because obviously T'Challa finds out that he was framed. He did not kill his father. That is my background on those two. What do you think about that? Do we ever miss anything?
I don't think so. I think just at the end of Endgame, they are together, the two of them, and yeah, which kind of Cap basically says goodbye to the two of them together.
Yeah, and I guess at the end of Endgame, we do see Old Man Cap give Sam the Captain America shield, and Sam says, we see this actually in the opening scene. It says it feels like it belongs to someone else, and Steve says it doesn't. It's yours. And so that's where we're left off going to the show, assuming that Falcon is going to be the next Captain America. Maybe not immediately, but that is what Steve Rogers, Captain America, wanted. And this all takes place 6 months after the second snap, after everyone comes back. So in this episode, it's called New World Order, which I like. It's just kind of showing this does a good job compared to WandaVision and Spider-Man Far From Home. Not that they did a bad job in any way. They're just different. This did a good job of showing maybe like the global ramifications of the snap and what happens when half the population disappears and then what happens when it comes back and how chaotic that can be. So really we're seeing the new world order post Avengers Endgame. We start with a very, very good action sequence where Falcon is sent to rescue a U.S. captain from LAF. And the person who is in charge of this mission in some way is Batroc the Leaper, who we did see in Captain America the Winter Soldier. Peter, these Falcon action scenes are incredible. Two things jumped out to me is one, Redwing became a badass, and I love what they're doing with that because Redwing in the comic books was an actual Falcon that Sam could like think with. So I like the modern adaptation. And then did you notice how many times he was using his wings as a shield?
Yes. I thought that was just such a foreshadowing. He's going to get the shield. He has to get the shield. It makes sense. I like that his first battle is very much Steve's first battle in Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
They fight the same guy in both of these situations. I like that. I like the parallel line that's running between us. I like it.
Yeah, the themes of Winter Soldier and this show are almost identical. There's that mistrust and there's all of that going on, which I like. We do meet Torres, who are basically he's a soldier and he is Falcon's boots on the ground during that mission. He is in awe of Falcon. One thing to know about Torres, I don't remember his first name, but in
Joaquin.
Joaquin Torres, in the comic books, when Falcon becomes Captain America, Joaquin Torres becomes the Falcon. So maybe this is just a little Easter egg, or maybe they'll do something about it. But I did like his character. He was just in awe of Falcon. I think like the rest of us, because that was Peter. That was the first time we really saw the Falcon's like full skill set in that. You know what I mean? That's the longest we've ever really seen. Correct?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it really did set up how this show is tonally different than WandaVision.
Oh
This
yeah.
is much more traditional Marvel. It had the action sequence, the tight shots. It showed you that he is a really good fighter. And like you said, it's the most we've gotten to see him in action doing his own thing and standing on his own. And I just loved until it went up to the very last second that he was able to rescue him. So it was, you were drawn in from the second it started.
Yeah, and like you said, Falcon, he saves the day literally just before they get into Libyan airspace. And I think what this show is going to be so great about, Peter, is Falcon and Winter Soldier, both of these characters, in the small doses we've gotten of them in the MCU, I've been a giant fan. Anthony Mackie is hilarious. The Winter Soldier is one of the gnarliest characters in the entire MCU. And similar to how we were raving about Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen and also Catherine Hahn, I think by the end of this show, we're going to be in awe of how funny and great Mackie and Stan are going to be in these roles.
100%. I really feel like these shows are allowing the actors and the characters just to breathe and really expand upon characters that were really great to begin with. But obviously, when you have 2 to 2.5 hours of film time on a movie, you can't explore everybody. So I think that when this was first suggested a couple of years ago, it didn't make sense. Like, you're going to do shows about characters as opposed to movies. But now seeing this, it's really proving that this concept really works. And it's that comic book feeling all over again.
It's a 6-hour movie. This more than WandaVision, I would say, because WandaVision was very much based on that old TV thing. This is a 6-hour movie. This episode felt like the first 15 to 20 minutes of a Marvel movie, but just times two, so they could do more stuff and lay more groundwork. I am very, very, very excited to see where this show goes. And with all the press that Anthony Mackie was doing before this show, I mean, I always knew he was funny. He's so funny. He seems just like a 10 out of 10 dude. So very excited for him to get a bigger role in the MCU because I totally think he fits the tone and the humor aspect of it. And I think he'd be a damn good Captain America.
Yeah, I think this show's really going to show that too. For people that might not be on board with it, I think this will really show. And like you said, that press tour, they're all doing such a good job of doing the outside the show work and doing it and backing it up with the shows. It's going hand in hand.
Yeah. So the next scene we get is basically after the mission, and we got Falcons talking to Joaquin Torres, and they're having some lunch. And first thing we see is Torres offers to help Falcon fix Redwing, and we see that Falcon does not like the military, the Air Force touching his tech, whether that be they don't know how to work on it because it's so like advanced because it's Stark tech, or this, in my opinion, kind of adds to the mistrust of everything going on. Because I didn't just mention this, Peter, but that mission he went on seemed pretty weird. There
Yeah.
was not that much explanation, and it just seemed like kind of a setup, and he was able to somehow escape it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that the mistrust is going to play out through the whole show because, again, and he does allude to this later in the episode where he's like, he took this job, with the Air Force to kind of keep busy and do things and still help. But again, this is not the Avengers. This isn't what he believes in fully. So he's kind of doing what feels familiar, but at the same time, it's not 100%
Mm-hmm.
something he can believe in, especially coming off of Shield falling apart. And as they said in the episode, everything's kind of chaotic after the snap.
Yeah, and so in the scene we get Torres explains the Flag Smashers. They're basically a group that thought life was better during the blip. They don't believe in borders. They want a unified world. They're essentially just anarchists. And one thing that I did notice in that conversation was Torres seemed to not be like very pro Flag Smashers, but his tone, I thought he was a little somewhat, he understood. Does that make sense? He kind of understands where they're coming from.
Yeah. Because I guess he's confused too. I mean, I think anyone would be like, where do your, like, there's a line about that alliances are broken,
Mm-hmm.
no one's really on the same page anymore. So I think that even though you think you're on the side of good, like, are you on the side of good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just further adding to that mystery. And one thing I really liked was Torres asks Falcon, like, where is Steve? Where is Cap? And this is such a great question because we know that the MCU knows Tony Stark died. But with Cap, it's kind of like they haven't really explained it yet. And so if you're like just an average person, you're like, wait, what happened to that Captain America guy who was like super young and he just saved the world and did all this stuff? He's just gone. So like people don't know that he aged and went back in time. So some people he asked Sam straight up if Captain America is on the moon. And at first I thought that was ludicrous. Peter, I think Captain America's on the moon. I'm serious. I think he is on the moon, and we might see that.
I think we might see him. I do think that. I was a little confused by the moon thing because it threw me off because you might remember this better than I do. In Far From Home, when they do that in memoriam section, do they use Steve or does Steve not get used in that in memoriam section?
I'm pretty sure it was just Natasha and Tony, but I could be wrong. Because I don't think the world thinks Cap's dead because they didn't say he died in that scene there. They're like, he kind of like laid down his shield.
Because
So
even
maybe,
the museum has like the last mission is what it says. And
yeah.
so I don't know. I mean, I think all of them have the door open. And that's what I love about Marvel. It's like the door is always open. They're never going to say never to anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think that'll be something that they will continue to go back to in this series is what happened to Cap and what does the world think happened to Cap? Because you got to think he's an important enough figure where people are curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
So the next scene we have is basically Sam's going to give the shield back to the government at this press conference type thing. He talks about how a world needs heroes, and Steve was that, but he basically gives it back because he says it belongs to Steve, and not like Sam doesn't just think he shouldn't have it. He doesn't think anyone should have it. And that we will talk about later because that will obviously open some doors. But right after that, we get Rhodey, a great cameo from John Cheadle. You get the vibe that Rhodey thinks Sam should have accepted it, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I think so. And I think Rhodey is going to play a role in Sam eventually accepting it. I think that his inclusion is important because again, he was Iron Man's right hand. So and Sam was
and he was with
Steve's.
Steve during the 5 years. Rhodey was not snapped. If anyone might know what Steve wanted for the future of Captain America, Rhodey could be that person.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's going to be a huge deal going down later in the line that he doesn't accept it. I think this series will be him going back to get it. But there's definitely the sketchy government museum dude just seems like a scumbag.
Oh, 100%. He fits the role perfectly.
Mm-hmm. And then we're going to get a flashback. We're not told it's a flashback, but we quickly realize, and it's Bucky the Winter Soldier taking some people out in this bank/hotel. He takes out his target, and then he kills a kid at the end. And this kid's basically like, I didn't see anything. I won't say anything. Please don't. And we see Bucky in the Winter Soldier mode saying, Hail Hydra. He kills the kid. And we get a scene where Bucky then wakes up from what that was presumably a nightmare on the floor of an apartment, which really calls back to Steve and Sam's conversation in Winter Soldier about how when they're home after they've been fighting in wars, that their beds are like marshmallows and too soft. They got used to sleeping on the ground with a rock as a pillow. So I thought that was a good callback to that conversation.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I was watching it and I thought of that specific callback, I was like, Ryan's gonna think of this too. It's not just me that's thinking of like
Yeah.
this is freaking out about this. So I'm glad. This is why this podcast works, because like we're on that same page.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just we've never seen anything like this in the history of like modern storytelling with the amount of things you can call back to in the interconnectedness of Marvel. We're at 23 movies where we have now 2 TV shows and just more and more growing, and they continue to just lay the foundation and connect it all, which just makes life so much fun for people like us. Um, okay, and so next we're gonna get is Bucky's going to therapy, which this is a very uncomfortable but good scene. We find out that he's not talking to anyone. He hasn't been responding Sam's texts. He has like less than 10 contacts in his phone. The only person he's talked to in the last week is his therapist. She says that's sad. There is a good back and forth between the two of them. We find out that Bucky has been pardoned because he helped save the world. But one of the mandates is he does have to do this therapy, so they kind of know he's not going to lose his mind again. And what we see, Peter, is he has a list of people he needs to somewhat reconcile with. And we see the first thing of that is we find out that he helped some senator or congresswoman get power when he was the Winter Soldier. And he basically just goes to her and turns her into the feds or the cops, however it works, FBI. And he says, I am not the Winter Soldier anymore. I am James Bucky Buchanan Barnes. He does a funny smile, too. What did you think about that whole scene?
I liked it because again, it's showing us his personality that we saw in the first Avenger and that we did not see for his subsequent appearances. You know, he was very much the Winter Soldier, or very much post Winter Soldier, figuring himself out. But I liked that this really fleshed out his personality and really gave him that aspect that we don't really have, this kind of sarcasticness. We had it from Tony a little bit, you know, specifically he was the best one about this, but now it's a little bit different. And I like that, again, it's letting the characters breathe and you're able to understand that they are each individual in this team.
Yeah, and I think if you count the amount of things Bucky says just in this therapy scene, it might be close to the amount of words he's ever said in the MCU.
I think that's a good observation. I think that is well. And I like that the therapist wasn't letting up on him. She was just she went right back at him and didn't let up on anything, which I think was a welcome back and forth.
Yeah, and I think that's not the last we've seen of her, because you remember that preview we saw where it looked like couples counseling with Sam and Bucky. So I think that scene is something to definitely look forward to. And so now we're going to go back to Sam, and he's down in Louisiana. And we're going to meet his sister, who has been holding up the family in the business. She has 2 kids. And for the last 5 years, when Sam was gone and all the world was gone, she's been the one keeping the lights on and doing this all for her family when she's been alone. And Sam comes back and he wants to fix everything because he's the superhero and he wants to see what he can do. And there is a little tension between the two of them. I don't think it's like hostile or anything. I think it's really understandable if you think about what all these people have freaking been through, of people disappearing and all that shit. It's crazy. So, the sister wants to sell the family boat to help the business, and Sam is very conflicted about that because of the memories it has with his mom and dad and stuff like that. And so Sam basically says like he can fix this. He's using that superhero complex type thing of like, listen, I'm the Falcon. I fought Thanos. I did all this stuff. I'll take care of it. Let's go to the bank. Peter, what do you think about the interaction between Sam and his family?
I really liked it because, again, we're getting to see, we don't really see them have a family, any of these heroes, with the exception, you know, Captain Marvel did have some of that aspect with Monica. We have Peter it has Aunt May. We've got certain characters that are able to have interactions with people outside of the team. I think it really helped to ground him and, again, really establish who his character is because, again, this episode is the most either of them, like you said, have talked. in these shows, in these movies. So I like the back and forth with the sister. I like that we're getting further insight into that the world was going on and was in upheaval and a disaster because of the blip and the snap. And just I like that now he's kind of having to come back and try to fix things because there is this time that was lost.
Yeah, definitely. And one other thing we see around this time is Torres is back in were they in Tunisia, Libya?
Switzerland.
They were in Switzerland?
Wait, where Torres' scene was in Switzerland.
Okay, in that next scene?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. And we see him, he's like kind of filming, and he's around a flag smasher event where a bunch of people are meeting up. And basically what happens is a bunch of people meet up in this place, they're handed masks, and then some big robbery goes on and everyone starts running around to create mass chaos. Isn't that how you would interpret it? Yeah?
Oh yeah. And everyone's wearing the same mask.
And so we do see a dude jump out of the building, and it would appear that this dude has super strength or something because he takes Torres down after Torres tries to like arrest him for doing all this, and he kicks him in the face. I was very worried if Torres was going to survive that because when I was watching it for the first time, I didn't know Torres's like significance in the comics. Like he used to be, how important he was. I was like, are they just gonna kill this dude? Because that was gnarly. What was your first impression of what we presume to be one of the main villains of the show, the Flag Smashers, Peter?
I thought it was an interesting way to introduce them because, again, it introduces a moment of chaos. It introduces all this confusion of people pretending to be someone else, which I think kind of plays into the whole mistrust theme that we've talked about for this series. I thought the super strength was a bit of a surprise. I did not see that coming because we haven't really been introduced to the aspect of other people being superpowered individuals. And in fact, when Torres does call Sam up, there is this kind of pause in Sam when he asks, like, the strength this guy had, which I think is interesting because, I mean, is it too soon to say mutants? Are they coming out or am I, reaching again? But I don't know.
I think, well, one thing about mutants is mutants have the relationship via Wolverine to the Weapon X program, which is essentially a super soldier. Yes, Wolverine is at first a mutant. He is a mutant, which allows him to go under this, but he is similar to Captain America, a super soldier. And really quickly on the Flag Smashers, in the comic books, they're actually based on a Captain America villain named the Flag Smasher, who he believed all the things that they are saying, but he was just kind of one person. And he was a very popular or very big Captain America villain. And so that they seem to have taken that character and apply it to a group. But I'm sure we will meet the leaders of this group and get some more character background on that. Let's now go to the bank with Falcon, and the banker recognizes him, kind of. He first asks him if he went to LSU or was a running back at at LSU, which is a tough look for the banker. And then Falcon very funnily flaps his arms like a falcon, and he recognizes that this is Falcon from the Avengers. Again, he is not like a tier 1 Avenger, so people don't recognize him immediately, but he still does get some sort of recognition, and none of that means shit because the first thing the banker does is he kind of asks Falcon, like, how do the Avengers get paid? Was Tony paying you guys? And then he like offers his condolences. He asks a few things, and I have actually wondered this too, because for some Avengers it doesn't matter how they're getting paid, Thor, stuff like that, but for some like Captain America, Falcon, and it does matter, and it's very curious to see. So basically, Sam suggests that they live off the goodwill of others for the things they do, and that makes sense. They do a lot, so I totally get that. What was your whole interpretation of that?
I think that the show's no worries. I think the show's really allowing, again, it's answering these questions that viewers, maybe not the casual viewers, but like the in-depth diehard fans are like, well, who does these things? So obviously Tony pays for a lot, but and he does have a couple lines about that throughout the movies, but it really kind of showed again too that even though they are superheroes, they still have regular lives going on. They've still got problems, like the money problems. They've still got these situations. And again, it really, expanded the backstories to these characters, which up until this point, we haven't really had.
Well, absolutely. And after all of that, the banker denies Sam the loan for the family business. He does say, which was I thought was weird, like you have nothing the last 5 years. And it's like no shit, like half the world wasn't here. But one thing I was thinking about is with this is you got to assume that during the snap or when everyone half the world was gone, it was probably really freaking easy to get a loan because there was not that much going on. And now with everyone back, it is interesting to think of what that would do to like the financial institution of the world. Um, and so, yeah, the banker just denies him. And it's the sad reality of the post snap world and just the sad reality of how the real world is, too. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I think again it shows how post snap everything's sort of rebuilding, which we kind of saw a little bit at the end of WandaVision, how the town kind of looks
Mm-hmm.
and kind of, which was only a week or so after, 3 weeks after, but it was like things are still having to come back to normal, and you do have that rebuilding period, which parallels, the MCU rebuilding the roster and who's coming. So again, I like that it's showing us these two trains running side by side.
Yeah. And so the next scene we're gonna go to is we're gonna have Bucky. He's gonna meet Yuri the old man. Not meet. We're gonna meet Yuri the old man. And it first starts with somebody's trying to put the extra recycling into his trash can, which, as someone who lives in an apartment where it's very hard to get recycling space, I totally understand the battle to get trash can space. I like that. But Bucky he separates the argument and he says, "Let's go get lunch." The old man says, basically, "As long as you don't talk." I love that. I thought that was really funny. And so we see them hanging out at this place, and we know that the old man does miss his child very much. Um, but Bucky is there. It seems just to provide some sort of comfort, a friend. The old man, Yuri, is his name, correct?
Correct.
Yuri. Okay, I'm gonna start calling him Yuri because I should stop calling him old man. Um, Yuri gets Bucky a date with the waitress at the restaurant, and Bucky is like apologizes at first, but then the waitress is very much into it, and so we get later on in the night, Bucky and the girl are playing Battleship or having a date. We get some great lines from Bucky when he says he's 107 years old. She laughs at it, even though it's true. And then she does ask about why he was wearing a glove because obviously he has a vibranium arm. And he says poor circulation, which I think is hilarious too, because think about it. If you're Bucky, you can't really be like broadcasting to the world, like, hey, I'm the winter soldier and all this
Yeah.
stuff because checkered past. So it is funny to think of the casual excuses he has to come up with in these types of situations. And then the next thing we have is in the date. This is where shit gets real. Do we know the name of the girl Bucky's on a date with?
No, I want to say no, but I feel like I watched the episode twice already too, and it's like I should know this. I want to say no.
Yeah, I don't think we know. Because I watched it a couple times too. And so basically, the girl tells Bucky how nice it is that he's been hanging out with Yuri, and she starts talking about how much Yuri misses his son, and how hard that's been on him. She talks about how if you lose your spouse, there's a name for that. If you lose your uh, parents, there's a
Parents.
name for that, but there's nothing when you lose your child because it's so heartbreaking. And this obviously just tips Bucky over the edge, and he leaves, he runs out really quickly, and he goes to Yuri's apartment. And Yuri opens the door and is like, "Why are you here?" Basically, and we see what we were thinking the whole episode, but didn't want it to be true. That the kid who Bucky killed, the Winter Soldier killed in that flashback earlier in the episode, was Yuri's son. And we see in Yuri's apartment some sort of shrine to his son. And we see how that affects Bucky. We see how that hurts him. And Bucky, he can't bring himself to say it. And so he just pays Yuri back for lunch. Yuri's like, "What the hell is going on here?" And then Bucky leaves. And we see Bucky's list. He has a list of people he needs to reconcile with. And Yuri is at the top. And so I do think at some point in the show, Peter, it's going to be heartbreaking, but we are going to see Bucky come to grips and have this conversation, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that again, this is kind of showing that side that he's repenting for what he's done and he's trying to really make amends. I think that this is going to be the hardest one for him to do. I
Mm-hmm.
did like when we first are introduced to their interaction with him and Yuri. It's an alley, which calls back to when Bucky was first introduced in First Avenger. He rescues
Mm-hmm.
Steve in the alley, and I
I
like
really
that.
like that.
I like I like the aspect that he is trying to, in a sense, have a friend, but at the same time, he fully can't have this friend because he did something that's very much unforgivable, I guess, at this point.
Hmm.
Unless I could also see, maybe because I'm optimistic, that Yuri forgives him. I do see that happening potentially, as opposed
Hmm.
to it being like a never want to see you again type thing. But
Yeah.
I like that we are seeing the multifacetedness of these storylines, that nothing is just a straight line. It's like, sure, he had the list of being a therapy, he to make amends for these things, and it seems pretty straightforward. But then by this point, you're like, it's not going to be that easy.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. That's going to be a very tough scene, but I do think that will be a big part of Bucky's character development. Um, and so that wraps up that part of the episode. And we get at the end, the government, the same dude who was like thanking Sam for giving over the shield, sus motherfucker. He um he announces a new Captain America, and this square walks out who literally looks the like a kid dressed up for Halloween as Captain America or something in that costume. And he is announced as the new Captain America. And we see Sam's reaction to that. And it is not good. I bet he feels I bet he feels a lot of ways. I bet he feels betrayed. I bet he feels stupid for giving it over. And I think we're definitely going to jump into that next episode. Fun fact, that's Kurt Russell's kid. Who's that?
Is it really?
Yeah, who's that's Captain America. And from the comics, this Captain America, his name is John Walker. And he's called the U.S. Agent, and he's kind of like he's a Captain America who's a lot more violent and doesn't always do the right thing. He's not necessarily a bad guy, but he can be. So it'll be very curious to see how they develop his character going forward. Peter, your thoughts on this final scene of this episode?
Um, in regards to storytelling, I think it sets up a great, arc going forward. As a diehard Captain America fan, obviously not stoked about this rando being Captain America.
Yeah.
Um, I do think it's interesting though, because this would set up theoretically him as a villain. We've got the Flag Smashers, we've got LAF, and then we've still got Zemo, who hasn't made his appearance yet.
And we saw his name on that list.
We did, so that's like 5 bads in the play. So I think it's a good way to end the episode, because it was over and I was like, wait, this is it? Like, I need more.
Yeah.
So great job on that aspect.
Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap up, I have a couple like overarching questions or theories I want to talk about, and if you have any, we'll talk about them too. One thing that I am very much tied to, and I like more than like I was tied to Mephisto or Nightmare being in WandaVision, even though I think time will tell if we were right about that. I'll say that. So think about Avengers Endgame, Captain America's fight versus Thanos. What happens to his shield?
It gets broken.
It gets freaking destroyed.
Yeah.
Like shattered. And then what happens is when Cap comes back from his time heist, he shows up with a shield and gives it to Sam. Here is my theory that is not a theory, it is a fact. That shield is special for Sam. There is special things about that shield that Cap specifically had made for Sam. If you look at the way the shield looks too, there's some like it's not the exact shield. There's some like cutouts around it, like Google image it if you're listening. I think that it has some sort of connection maybe to Redwing, to Falcon. I think that this shield is not just a normal shield. I think it has a connection to Sam, and I am very much married to that idea. What do you think?
I'm very happy you said that, because I legit thought I was maybe losing it, that I'm too looking into things, because I was like, this shield looks off to me. Like, I'm watching the episode and I'm just like, this seems a little off. Something was not right with me. But I'm glad that you've said this, because now I'm like, okay, I could get on board with this idea. I like this. Yeah, because it did not look right to me.
Mm-hmm. And there's the a theory too of like I'm pretty sure in the comic books the shield is not made of vibranium. At one point, it's made of proto adamantium, which is what Wolverine's claws are made out of, or they're made out of adamantium. So that could be another tie to Weapon X and the X-Men and mutants. Who knows? My next question for you, Peter, is what will bring these two together, Bucky and Sam? Because we did not see them yet together. Have we already seen what will bring them together? Is the announcement of U.S. Agent John Walker what brings them together? What do you think?
I think that it's going to be that. I'd like that announcement as a unifier, but I also think the Flag Smashers are going to be a unifier because I feel like they're going to be looking into the Flag Smashers when they end up colliding with Sharon Carter, since she's CIA. I feel like that would be a logical connection.
And then another thing is in the previews, we do see Bucky and Sam at what is presumably Sam's house in Louisiana throwing the shield off trees and stuff. He's getting the shield back somehow.
That's true. That's true.
And we knew it was going to happen.
It's going to be a question.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they're both throwing it around too.
Yeah, I really hope it's because you know how I said earlier how they're kind of like if you combine them, they are in a way Steve with the man at a time and then the morals of Sam. That would be pretty badass if they were like collectively. Like Sam is the main Captain America, but the way those two could both use it. Because I remember in well, obviously in Endgame, Thor and Cap, they use the hammer and the shield to do some cool stuff. But even in, I think it's either Winter Soldier or Civil War, there's one time where Black Widow has to get the shield for Cap, and she slings it to him or something. And it's like, I would really love to see those two swing the shield back and forth to each other and do some cool like action shit. That'd be really fun.
I think we are going to definitely get something along those lines because this show, even from this first episode, has shown that it's going to be action heavy. It's definitely going to be. It's interesting how WandaVision was more. It was the magic and then the cerebral things. And now here again, we're going with the emotional aspects of both of them, but we've got all this heavy action sequences.
Okay, I got another question for you. Do we see General Thaddeus Ross in this show? The dude, for those out there listening, he's a big poo-poo pants. He's the one at the end of Civil War, has like everyone captured. He wants the Sokovia Accords. He's in Hulk. He's just kind of a dick. Do you think we see him? Because we're going to see him in Black Widow.
So I think, yes, we see him. I almost feel like maybe I'm reaching too far, but what if he like recruits Zemo to like help with keep Sokovia Accords in line type of thing?
Well, that was my next question. How's Zemo get involved in this, Peter?
I think definitely he's going to become part with the Flag Smashers. I don't know if they're going to be separate and again collide together with their unified visions, but I think the fact that he wasn't allowed to die at the end of Civil War is weighing on him. So I don't see him becoming a good guy. I don't think that's possible. I do feel like he's going to collide with the Flag Smashers.
Yeah, and I don't think that this show, I could be wrong, I don't think this is going to be the end of Zemo either. I think he will continue to be a thorn on our heroes' sides for the foreseeable future. I don't think we see the end of Zemo in the show. He's a big-time villain, and I think that it's very smart to bring him back because he gets all tied into like stuff like the Cabal, where all the villains like are together in a team, and Zemo's very methodical, could be a leader of something like that. So I hope they keep him around, and I'm very curious to see how they use him in this show, because I know at some point he's gonna like probably help them a little, but how quickly does he turn bad? Stuff like that. Peter, anything else you have on this?
One thing I did notice, because again, I read the press as much as you do, and I did see that Kevin Feige has said that, and Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie have talked about how this show could potentially set off 2 or 3 additional superheroes, storylines, plot twists in this one show. And again, Kevin Feige again reiterated that some of the Disney Plus shows are meant to have multiple seasons. You can't say which ones, obviously, because spoilers.
We know Loki.
And we've got Loki. So I feel like this one is one of those shows that would have multiple, more so than WandaVision. I feel like selfishly, I want more WandaVision, but I feel like that story is
been told.
And I don't want it. It's one of those things where like if they were to redo it, like you would damage season 1. So I feel like this one definitely has room to breathe. I'm always on board for more heroes being introduced. I think Marvel does it in a really good way when they need to. So
yeah,
I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah, I think that so we know Loki has 2 seasons. That's been confirmed. WandaVision, I don't think we'll have another. This show, I think, yes, there's a good chance it does have a second season. My only thought with this is, and maybe it does take 2 seasons, is I think that Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson is going to be so beloved in this role as Captain America, where I'm more now thinking like, when are they going to do a movie with him? When are we getting the Cap? I know it's early, but I didn't think this maybe a year ago, but I think we're going to eventually get a Captain America movie with Anthony Mackie.
I can see that. I like that idea. I can get behind that one. And since we are making predictions for going forward, I will almost feel like through this series we're going to see a more fleshed out, more developed character for Sharon Carter, to
Mm-hmm.
the extent where she fills that Black Widow role going
Ooh.
forward. Because obviously, an Endgame where Natasha's over with, unless there is the once Black Widow ever, if it ever when it ever comes out, has that whole aspect of her sister, unless her sister becomes the
Yeah.
new Black Widow. I mean, I could
I
definitely see Sharon taking that role.
I like that. I will counter with I do think we're going to see Sharon in a bigger role going forward. And maybe not necessarily it won't be maybe not Black Widow in terms of or very similar actually. That's a good point. But maybe like Peggy Carter. You
Yeah,
know, like her role in Captain America, the first Avenger, and obviously what she meant to the development of Shield and all that stuff. Maybe we'll get a modern day version of that, or maybe she becomes some sort of like a better version of Maria Hill. I don't know.
the possibilities are out there.
Yeah, we got folks. It's just one episode, and I'm already predicting movies and all sorts of things. And I will. Captain America's on the moon. You heard it here. I totally buy into that theory. Peter, always a pleasure talking to you. We'll be back next week to talk episode 2 of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and either next week or the next week, we will we will do the Snyder Cut, ladies and gentlemen. I've watched it once. It's 4 hours long. Very long, but very good. Peter's got to do it too. But I think it's going to take 2 or 3 watches for us to do it justice and do a good pod for you. And that's 12 hours. So give us some time to dive through that. Peter, always a pleasure, my friend.
Always a good time. Look forward to it.
All right. We'll catch you guys next week.